What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 285 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and this is the Hot Tags edition of the week, where I'm going to be breaking down some of the current events, rumors, news, gossip, and whatever the hell else is going on in the world of professional wrestling that I feel like talking about that happened over the past couple of days. So let's dive right into things here. Let's talk about something that makes me laugh every time I look at it. Well, not the story itself, but just the name behind it. Brie Bella and Daniel Bryan had announced beforehand that they were going to have a baby girl, and they had their baby girl this past couple of days or so. It just always makes me laugh about the name, Birdie Joe Danielson. It's just such a... Why would you name your kid Birdie Joe? I don't understand it whatsoever. I've talked about this quite a bit every time this subject's brought up about how they're dooming this kid to get made fun of for the rest of her life and all that. And I agree with the sentiments that some other people have said where it's like, oh man, she's going to be growing up with this like hippie mom and dad, and she's going to go to an art school, and like Birdie Joe is going to be the type of person that wears like those hats with the little sunflower on it and all that. And it's not my bag, but I'm not going to be her dad, so it doesn't really matter, does it? But congrats to that couple at the very least, on the positive side of things. On the negative side of things, the fuck you thinking with that name, Birdie Joe? Unfortunately, we have to talk a little bit about Braun Strowman's injury being worse than originally intended. The original reports had said he was going to be out between 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 weeks. Now it's starting to look like 6 months. This sucks, man. Braun Strowman has been the most interesting thing on Monday Night Raw for, God, I don't even know how long, but it's been quite a while, actually, surprisingly. And for him to get out is one thing where it's just gonna it's gonna hurt Monday Night Raw. But for him to come out with an injury right around the time that he was building up some more momentum and it was going to be like his time to shine, that really sucks, not just for him, but for everybody else too, because you got to look at what they were planning for the future. They were clearly going to be doing an ambulance match with Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman as the main event of Extreme Rules. Now that's not the case. Now we're going to get our Fatal 5-Way, which is like an emergency plan. You got these two feuds that we're going to have separate matches, the Rollins and Joe and the Wyatt and Balor match, and then Roman Reigns has nothing else to do. So what do? You throw them all in the same hat together, and you make it a number one contenders match. That way they can transition to some kind of different feuds if they need to or whatever like that. But I'm hoping, against hope, that this Braun Strowman injury is actually a blessing in disguise, because I've been saying this for a couple weeks now, and I'm going to be saying it for a couple months down the line if it's the case, but I do not, in any sense of the word, want to see Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship at WrestleMania next year. I don't want Brock Lesnar holding the title that long and not defending it on Monday Night Raw. I don't want this to build up to a match that people have already seen at WrestleMania. I don't want this to blow back in WWE's face when it comes to how they think that this would be like, Roman Reigns will finally get cheered. No, he won't. Last time around, you needed Seth Rollins to cash in the Money in the Bank to be able to get out of booking this scenario, and nothing has changed since then. So it's just repeating the same thing as before, and you're not going to get the result that you want. So I don't want them to sacrifice 12 months of the roster and the storylines and all that just to build up to a match that isn't going to be good, and it isn't going to give them the outcome that they want. Strowman was apparently going to be set up to wrestle Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire. Now we know that Brock Lesnar is still going to wrestle at Great Balls of Fire, and we know that SummerSlam is coming up right after that. So I'm hoping that, I can cross my fingers and I can rub a lucky rabbit's foot and all that other kind of stuff. Roman Reigns needs to win this Extreme Rules match and he needs to beat Brock Lesnar for the title at Great Balls of Fire. If he doesn't beat him at Great Balls of Fire, he needs to beat him at SummerSlam. Just go with it. Have him win the title, make it, whether it's a heel turn or not or something like that. Roman Reigns is your guy, okay. Put him at the top of the card and push Brock Lesnar aside. Brock does not need that hold that title for a year. Braun Strowman, in the meantime, he does his rehab. He has his time off with his injury. If he comes back around Survivor Series, you've got a built-in main event that is going to be huge. Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. Hell, you know what? Maybe even Braun Strowman wins it. I don't know. I highly doubt it at that point, but maybe that's the case. And in the meantime, you can move on to different feuds, because if this was a 4 to 8 week thing with Braun Strowman, and they can kind of get away with maybe doing like Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor, Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor doesn't make any sense. Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire, or Finn Balor versus Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire, and then probably some other kind of stupid rematch at SummerSlam or something like that, or maybe even the other one of those two names at SummerSlam, then they could have dragged this out longer. Brock Lesnar could have fought one of the other people at Survivor Series, maybe at Royal Rumble, and then they could have done the Roman Reigns thing. But without Braun Strowman being there, they can't just have Roman Reigns have nothing to do. We've got Dean Ambrose and The Miz in a feud right now. Rollins and Joe, Balor and Wyatt. What do you do with Reigns? There really aren't many options when you think about it that way. So with Strowman out, I'm hoping that means we get Reigns versus Lesnar, and Strowman can kind of come back into the mix a couple months from now, and by that point, Brock Lesnar's not even a factor. Maybe even at that point, what you do, if you have Roman Reigns beat Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire or at SummerSlam, if you don't want to do the Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman thing, you got something else in the mind, maybe it's like Samoa Joe was fighting for the title at that point or something like that, then you do Braun Strowman versus Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. Or, even better yet, this is just, I'm putting it out there now, because maybe this is going to be the case. If you build up Braun Strowman just a little bit more, not even all that much more, if you can bring him back and he has the momentum that he has right now, you build him up just a little bit more, Braun Strowman versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania next year could sell. Not for the WWE Championship, not the Universal Championship, just as an attraction match. Just the biggest guy against the beast. That is kind of what I want to see happen. And then they don't, make the mistake of fucking it over and making Brock Lesnar whoop his ass, but he could lose, he could win, whatever. I think that that's the best way to go, and I'm hoping that this injury is a blessing in disguise. It sucks for Braun Strowman to have to go down with the injury, but if this leads to us not getting Reigns versus Lesnar at WrestleMania, it'll be all for the better. Let's talk a little bit about the WWE 24 special of Finn Balor. I usually try to give you guys a little bit of my breakdown of some of the things that have gone down in the WWE Network specials and stuff like that, so figured, I would check this out. That's why I'm recording this about like an hour after I normally would have. And, yeah, this was fine. This is going to sound a little, I don't know, smarmy isn't the word. But I find myself no longer really caring about the Finn Balor story, sort of. Like, I've seen enough of his past and his family and all, and it's such a shitty thing to say, because I don't have any ill will towards the guy whatsoever, but it's just not all that interesting to me personally, because, like, Finn Balor is cool, but I don't really, like, care all that much about, like, where he came from and everything. I don't have that kind of connection with it. It would be the same thing for a lot of different people on the roster. Like, if you did a special on Cesaro, I really don't care where Cesaro came from, or Sheamus, or, I don't know, 90% of the people on the roster. I really wouldn't be all that much interested. So it's not like a Finn Balor specific thing, but if they never do another behind the scenes look at Finn Balor type of thing again, I'm pretty cool with it. In the meantime, this one, I found myself skipping through a little bit. And I really also sort of just don't like how some of the WWE 24 things, if they're not widely covering a lot of different topics, they get a little bit lost in themselves. And then we end up having maybe like 5 minutes or so straight that's just kind of like really dramatic shots of Finn Balor posing with like an Imagine Dragons song playing and like, like little stupid stuff like that. I don't like those kind of WWE 24 specials. I like the ones where it's like the WrestleMania behind the scenes, where we get to see a lot of different little tiny things from different people and stuff. So if you are a big Finn Balor fan, it was interesting enough. If you're not a big Finn Balor fan, you didn't, at the very least, I didn't learn really anything new from this. It was sort of the same thing that we saw little tidbits about throughout the past couple of months and so. So I would say skip it. But it's up to you. If you got an hour and you want to spend it watching another WWE kind of related thing, maybe you want to check that out instead. We do have a whole lot of other content from the WWE Network coming this week. We've got, of course, the pay-per-views at the end of the week with NXT TakeOver Chicago and with Backlash, but we also have that taping of the United Kingdom stuff, which they're just, for now, calling the WWE United Kingdom Championship Special. That's going to be airing Friday, May 19th, and I've got spoilers that'll be posted earlier on that day. I'm probably not going to be really necessarily watching it live to do some kind of like live coverage, because I think it's like 3 p.m. Eastern time, and I might be in the middle of sleeping or something at that point. But if we do any kind of live coverage or something like that, then you'll see it on the website. More than likely, it's just going to be the spoiler stuff because it's not all that important. And we already kind of know what like some of the spoilers are because of what happens with NXT TakeOver and all that other kind of stuff. I'm not going to spoil that right now for you guys in case you don't want to be spoiled, but just, yeah. I'm interested to check it out. I will check it out nonetheless. Somewhere down the line, if I don't check it out that day live, I'll probably check it out later on that day. I think there's like a re-airing that they're going to be doing, but you could probably check it out, immediately after it's over and all that, because it's the network. You can pretty much do whatever you want when it comes to that. But that is our little midway break sort of thing, because we've had the United Kingdom Championship for a couple of months now, and they still haven't done anything with it as far as like a TV show. So every once in a while, they trot these guys out and they go, hey, remember, these guys still exist. TV show's coming. And it's really losing a lot of momentum, I think. At this point, I wouldn't be shocked if they just sort of cancel the deal a little bit and the United Kingdom Championship is like a failed experiment. But maybe not. I don't know. We do also have, I'm not making a whole hot tag out of this, but we have a little bit more information about the women's tournament, which is going to be taped in, I think, the middle of July is what it was. And it's going to air about like 3 episodes at a time or so they're going to upload. And the ending of that is going to be at the end of August. So stay tuned for that kind of stuff, because that is actually something that we will be covering on a little bit more detail. The tournaments are a bigger deal. So I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the tournaments than just random live events and stuff. If we're talking about content, let's transition from that to another way of like controlling how we watch television and such. NBC is going to be instituting a new way to do, it's not really too new, but they're going to be changing up the commercials from SmackDown. I don't know why just SmackDown, but the live episodes of SmackDown, for whenever they start doing it, might be tomorrow, might be next week, next month, whatever, are going to be doing picture-in-picture commercials. And the reason why they're doing this is partially because they understand that people do not give a shit about commercials. Because we're getting to this time frame right now. Actually, we're not even getting to it. We're way past that point where these companies, NBC Universal is a Comcast company, and Comcast is like the devil. They fucking run so much stuff, and they run it into the ground. It's ridiculous. But they are really getting to the point where they can't ignore the fact that people do not like commercials and advertisements. And if people can torrent things, and there's piracy problems, and people like DVR, people like watching stuff whenever they can, and people like skipping that kind of stuff, because commercials only exist for 2 reasons. Number one, the people that are paying for the commercials are quite literally, I mean, it's advertising. You're paying for the ability for people to see your product because you want them to give you money and to buy their product or go see their movie or whatever the case may be. And then on the flip side of things, the people airing the commercials are only doing that because they're getting the money from those people to air the commercials. If they weren't getting any money, you wouldn't see any commercials. But then again, you also wouldn't see any shows because they wouldn't be making any money. So there is this understanding of, yeah, we know commercials pay for the TV shows. Now, you want to ignore the idea that cable TV used to be a whole issue of you pay for it and you don't get commercials. Eventually, they're going to figure out a way to fuck you over. They always will. If anything is free, anybody will figure out a way to try to charge you for it. Whether it's free air at a gas station, eventually, suddenly it turns into you got to put a quarter in there. And then suddenly it's got to put $1 in there. And then we get to a point where people go, wait a minute, it used to be free? Yeah. So with commercials, there's that understanding of everybody knows, okay, we pay for cable, yet you're still going to do the commercials anyway. So instead, we're just not going to watch it. We're either going to DVR and we're going to skip it, or we're going to go to another room and take a shit, or get some food, or whatever the case may be with that kind of stuff. So they apparently did that little test run a few months ago where they did the little picture-in-picture thing. And at the time, it was just sort of out of nowhere. We were just sort of like, oh, this is kind of awkward. Well, supposedly the ratings were up 13% during that time frame because they had that little box in the corner of the in-ring action, and some people stuck around, and they were just sort of like, you know what? I kind of want to see what happens during the commercial break. That is exactly the type of mentality that these companies need to remember. If there's some kind of innovativeness, that's good. If there's something that can make the customer feel better, that's good. If it's something that you will benefit from, but nobody is going to like it except for you because you're getting more money, probably isn't going to work out in the grand scheme of things. Look at a restaurant. If a restaurant isn't getting enough money because not enough people are going to buy the food, raising the prices of your food and not changing anything else is not going to make that problem go away. If anything, it's probably going to make people not want to go to your restaurant even more because now they can't even justify spending the money for your shitty food or whatever. So this is a good step in the right direction. This shows that NBC knows nobody's going to watch these commercials unless there's a reason why. And at the very least, if you keep the in-ring action going on, there's more of a reason for them to stick around. So if they know that there's more of a reason for them to stick around, they can charge a little bit more for these commercials. And they can say, look, yeah, you're getting pushed off to the screen. You're not a full screen type of thing. But people might actually watch your commercial this time. I don't know why this is just SmackDown and it's not Monday Night Raw. But it goes to show you just a little bit how SmackDown is still not as important as Monday Night Raw is, because this is their test run, kind of. And if it works, then you know what? Maybe we're going to see this happen on Monday Night Raw as well. You can't do that on everything, because you can't do it on like scripted TV shows and stuff. But Monday Night Raw is exactly the same format of a show as SmackDown is. So if this works, whether it starts tomorrow, next week, next month, 2 months from now, whatever, I would suggest to everybody, if you're watching SmackDown live, don't change the channel on the commercials. You don't have to obviously pay attention because they're not going to know, you know, but keep the screen on during those commercials. That will convince them even more to continue doing this in the future. Just putting it out there. Oh, let's talk about something that happened on Monday Night Raw tonight. Goldust turned heel on R-Truth, effectively ending the Golden Truth, which was a tag team that I've hated for the longest time in the world, but I did not see this one coming. And mainly the reason why I'm talking about this is because, just happened. Add another hot tag into the mix, why not? I am curious why Goldust is turning heel. I don't know if that's a situation where it points more towards a push for Goldust in like the mid-card, or if they want to use him as like a heel jobber in the mid-card, or they realized that there wasn't really any future in Golden Truth as a tag team, and maybe they want to do some other things in the future with R-Truth even, because I know that he's been doing some commentary work for Main Event. But I'm kind of curious right now if this means anything about DIY. This is a total jump, and there's really no validity to it whatsoever, but humor me for a minute. We have Enzo and Cass and the Hardy Boys, Heath Slater and Rhino, Cesaro and Sheamus, and the Golden Truth. At one point, those were all babyface teams on Monday Night Raw, and the only heel team that we had was Gallows and Anderson. Then we get Cesaro and Sheamus turning heel. So that takes one out of the babyface column, adds one to the heel column, starting to balance this out a little bit more. Now we don't have Golden Truth anymore. But Goldust could always just have another tag team partner. Maybe that's going to be something that we see in the future. I don't really know. I don't think R-Truth is going to be getting a tag team partner, but maybe. Heath Slater and Rhino, to me, I think, could potentially turn heel down the line if they wanted to. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. DIY with NXT TakeOver Chicago, I had thought originally they might go to SmackDown, because SmackDown has American Alpha and The New Day, and they didn't have any other teams at the time that were babyfaces. Breezango's a babyface team now, so that kind of defeats the purpose of bringing DIY in there. But maybe DIY goes to Monday Night Raw, because also DIY's members, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, were in the Cruiserweight Classic. And for a little portion of time, they were considered Cruiserweight wrestlers. If you put them on Monday Night Raw, they could be in that division, and they could be in the tag team division, depending on if you want to do any crossover stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see if maybe Golden Truth split up to move a little bit of room for DIY. And I want to know what you guys have to say about that in the comments below, so, keep that in mind. But still interesting nonetheless, because Golden Truth was a tag team that looked like it was going to start getting a little bit more of a boost, and instead, random Goldust heel turn. Did not see that one coming. We got another tag team topic here, which is the original plans for the SAnitY group in NXT apparently did not include most of the members of the team. I mean, it doesn't have Alexander Wolf in it, doesn't have Eric Young leading it, doesn't have Nikki Cross, and doesn't actually either have Killian Dane, which that one is not really too shocking, because originally they had Sawyer Fulton and they replaced him with Killian Dane, but Sawyer Fulton was in the original plans for SAnitY. And if you buy what Marcus Louis is saying, it was going to be Marcus Louis, Sawyer Fulton, and Solomon Crowe were going to be SAnitY. So first off, that kind of sucks for Fulton, as he was part of the original crew, and then they go, nah, we're going to change it up a little bit. And then he's part of that one, and then he gets booted out of it because of an injury, and now he's back to square one again. Solomon Crowe and Marcus Louis, though, I can see Solomon Crowe. That makes sense to me. Marcus Louis being part of SAnitY? Is this for the whole bald thing? Because the story going behind this is that it was going to be a Mad Max type of thing. So I'm kind of picturing Marcus Louis as the dude that was like spraying his face with the silver paint kind of stuff. And Solomon Crowe, I guess, being sort of like an Immortan Joe type or something, maybe. Maybe Sawyer Fulton did that part, I don't know. But Solomon Crowe probably being like the headmaster of the whole thing. And I was not a fan of Solomon Crowe when he was around, so I think that we're better off here with the current crop for SAnitY. But it is interesting that they had these plans going back as far as Solomon Crowe and Marcus Louis, and they just sort of waited until they felt like they had the right person with Eric Young and stuff like that. So I wonder what other things are kind of cooking up in the background that we haven't seen yet, because we know that the Glorious theme was going to go to Shinsuke Nakamura, ended up going to Bobby Roode. Now we know that SAnitY was originally going to be that trio, and it ended up being the group that we have now. So what else is working in the background of NXT that we're going to be seeing in a couple of months or maybe a couple of years from now? We could hear some kind of story that it's like some gimmick that, like, I don't know, maybe they're thinking about putting a gimmick on like Kona Reeves, and 5 months from now they sign some star, they give him that gimmick, and it ends up being like, you know, that whole idea of the Red Rooster or Mr. Perfect. Which one do you want to be? Worked out really well for one guy, didn't work out so well for the other one. So that's pretty interesting, I think. And as far as questions for you guys to leave in the comments below, what did you think that group would end up turning out to be? Would it actually be pretty decent, or would it be a flop of a group to have that SAnitY faction? Our final story to talk about here for the hot tags is, well, look, this wasn't going to be our main topic of the week originally, but it has kept blowing up, and I keep finding it funnier and funnier. This all started with a tweet from Rip Rogers, which stated, and I'm going to read the whole thing because why not? Every indie match now, handshake, drawn out move exchange, this is awesome chant, strike exchange, dive, no sell indie, strong style, dive, more strikes, no sells, dive, flippy floppy sequence, dive, hit everyone with each other's finisher, then Humpty Dumpty, we all fall down, fight forever chant, rinse and repeat until every move is useless and means nothing. Dive, take unsafe shot that looks like shit and hurts like hell, then roll up finish. Handshake and hug after the match. Everyone's hand is raised. All these guys chant, go home, and type on social media thanking your opponents and company for the match and telling others they should book these guys. ... Extended ellipses. Dive. Following that, Bully Ray tweeted out a picture of himself, and he's jumping off the top rope from some kind of an indie show, and it just has the word dive with a little rock on emoji. Pretty harmless kind of a thing, just sort of a response to that, you know. Randy Orton apparently felt the need to reply to this, saying, LOL, there is a difference between a young, hungry talent diving and an old, out-of-shape vet ... falling. Velvet Sky replies back to that, saying, wow, what a dick thing to say. Bully Ray comments back with, Dear Randy Orton, my tweet had zero to do with you. Looks like you were wrong. Again, you're still awesome. Then Randy Orton says, I really need to wish you an apology, before tweeting out another extended picture of text stating, which I thought was pretty funny as hell, so I'm going to read this whole thing out too. Sorry to the indie marks, indie guys, and old-timers who do dives took offense. Just having a good time over a few drinks in Denmark, closing the SmackDown Live tour, while beating Raw and making over $5 million in the last 11 shows. Now, I know to some that doesn't equate to a standing room of only crowd of 150 people paying $8 at an armory somewhere, but in the big boy world, that's called putting asses in seats. So enjoy your flips, dives, and 20 super kicks per match. To each their own. I will go dive back into my 13th title run and get ready to flip when my bank statement comes this month. Extended ellipses, headlock. Oh, and then, by the way, Batista tweets out, that's my guy, seemingly in support. Low Key gets mad. He says, unfortunately, you're protected in the WWE. Come out to the real world and test your tantrum with adults. Meanwhile, Goldust, guy who just turned heel, posts a picture of himself wearing glasses and looking kind of stern, like that type of look that your mom shoots you that means you better not act up, or I'm going to punish you later on when we don't have company around, that kind of a thing. So this has gotten so many people in a tizzy over, like, who's disrespecting indie talents and all that other kind of stuff. Clearly trolling, clearly getting a response out, and you know what? I find it funny as hell. And I also find it, for the most part, true. There's a certain glamour to indie wrestling, and it's sort of the same kind of thing that a lot of things fall victim to. It's like, you get a lot of people in any kind of regard that thinks anything indie is better. Whether it's like indie films. Oh, well, that thing's mainstream. That's a blockbuster. It can't be good. Indie movies are the only ones that are good. They're the only ones that have any kind of artistic value to them, that kind of thing. It's a bullshit statement. Anything can be good, no matter where it comes from, no matter who's producing it, no matter what the environment is. Anything can be good. So if you're the type of snob that says, like, American movies all suck, only the foreign movies are good, you're probably the type of douchebag nobody wants to listen to the opinion about. And if you are the same with indie wrestling, you're probably the type of person that comes off like a total smark in the negative sense of the word, where you kind of give those arguments some credibility when it's like, oh my God, these type of indie people and all that. To the same effect, there's a lot of great performers on the indie scenes that just don't get a chance to go to a bigger platform. But I do have to agree with this original statement about the whole, this is every indie classic match going on. They do kind of follow that same format. And it's funny to hear it written down, because as soon as I'm reading this and it's, handshake, drawn out move exchange, this is awesome, strike exchange, no sell, etc., I was picturing the match in my head, and I'm sitting there going, I feel like I've seen this before. It's very, very true. And I mean, sometimes that's a good match. Sometimes it's kind of a little bit, you can kind of see it coming and everything like that. But even more so, when you talk about stuff like this, what's funny about the whole situation is how butthurt people get. Now, Randy Orton has had so many instances in the past where people have said that he's a piece of shit and like all this other kind of stuff. I got to assume that by now a lot of that's probably water under the bridge, and he's probably matured a whole lot more and stuff like that. But you always have at least some kind of a little bit of a nugget of a jerk in you. I'm somebody who can say that because I know that I've got a nugget of a jerk in me, and I think it's fun to mess with people every once in a while. So I thought that this was great of Randy Orton pulling this out. But at the same time, I don't think that he needed to really necessarily get himself thrown into the mix when it comes to like pointing out, anti-Bubba Ray Dudley type of a thing. So apparently there's a little bit of heat between those two in the past. I wasn't really aware of that until I started looking into this. But if that's the case and it was like him being petty, that sucks. If it's just a case of him trolling a little bit or whatever like that, I think it's funny. And I tend to agree. I don't think indie wrestling is like, the type of thing where it's like, oh my God, only indie wrestling is good because WWE is too mainstream. I don't think that. But at the same time, I also don't think that WWE is the only great thing out there just because it makes more money and stuff like that. Because if that's where that was the case, Transformers would be winning Oscars. Those movies make tons of bank, and they are god-awful. So it comes with the territory of each match can be good, each promo can be good, and you just don't get so butthurt about stuff, guys. So whether you agree or disagree, leave your comments below. Tell me what you think about these different topics for the hot tags. And make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And hit that little bell icon. That'll be a notification of any time that we post anything on this channel for however long you've got that set up. But that is going to tell you when the next couple of videos are going to be coming, because this week is going to be kind of packed a little bit, actually. What sucks about it is I've got a lot of shit I got to do this week, so I don't know how I'm going to get around to being able to do all this, but what we've got going on at the very least for you guys to be aware of, the next thing you're going to be hearing is the Ask Him, most likely. Then we've got round 4 of the Sexiest Superstars tournament. We've got, of course, the men's bracket and the women's bracket to break down when it comes to that. The NXT TakeOver Chicago predictions, the Backlash predictions, and then at the end of the week on Saturday and Sunday, we've got the NXT TakeOver Chicago post-show, and then the Backlash post-show. On top of that, next week, after we take care of all that stuff for this week, is going to be the May mailbag special. So if you have any questions that you want to submit to us for that kind of a thing to take care of, send that in over the next couple of days, because I'm not too sure when we're going to be recording that next week. Usually we do it on Wednesdays, if not Fridays. So you got, a week and a half essentially. But the sooner that you get your questions in, the better. Because if I got a lot of stuff on my plate this week, I don't know how long it's going to take for me to kind of like set up the template for it and everything like that. It's one of those things that you kind of take for granted a little bit, is there's always got to be templates for posts on websites, and you always got to do stuff for YouTube, descriptions and the graphics and, different things like that. So the sooner you get them in, the better. And yeah, that's going to do us in for this episode of the Hot Tags, everybody. So I want to thank you all for checking this out, and I'll be seeing you next time, everybody. This has been another Smark Out moment, and I'm being counted out.